My mother missed my high school graduation. She missed it because she was in a relationship that year that consumed most of her available attention, and the graduation was on a Thursday, and the Thursday had not worked for her. She missed my college graduation because she had a work commitment. She said she could not move. She missed the opening of the small restaurant I co-owned for 2 years in my late 20s, which failed after 2 years, but which had been the most significant professional undertaking of my life at the time. She missed my 32nd birthday, which I had organized as a dinner with the people I loved when she had said she would come and then had not come. She had missed, across 20 years, the specific occasions that I had needed her to be present for, and she had missed them in the various ways that people miss things: work, prior commitments, relationships that took priority, and sometimes simply the specific version of not showing up that does not have a clear explanation and that the person who missed does not fully account for. I had spent 20 years adjusting my expectations and telling myself I was adjusted. Then, last year, she started showing up. She showed up for every important thing. She had been showing up for 14 months, and I did not know what to do with it. The first show up had been a reading I had given in April. I am a writer. I write fiction, and I have published 2 novels, the second of which had come out the previous fall, and for which I had been doing a series of readings at bookstores in the region. She had heard about the reading through my aunt, who is my mother's sister, and who had always been more present than my mother had been, and she had asked if she could come. I had said yes, because you cannot say no when someone asks if they can come to a public reading, or at least I cannot. She had come. She had arrived before the reading started, which was the first unexpected thing. She has a historical relationship with being late to things. She had sat in the 3rd row. She had listened to me read for 25 minutes. She had bought a copy of the book and had waited in the line for me to sign it. When I had been signing it, she had said, "I'm proud of you." I had said, "Thank you." She had said, "I mean it." I had said, "I know." She had left. I had stood at the signing table with the pen in my hand after she had gone, and I had felt something I had not expected to feel, which was not the relief or the warmth that her presence should have produced, but something more like a specific kind of confusion. A person I had been organizing myself around the absence of had been present, and I had not known what to do with the presence. I want to be precise about the confusion because it has been the most interesting thing about the 14 months. The confusion was not anger. I had done the anger in my 20s. The specific kind of anger that is the second stage of having organized yourself around someone's absence, after the first stage of grief. The anger had been real and had been necessary and had produced in me, by my early 30s, a kind of clarity about the relationship that the anger had been obscuring. My mother was a person who had not been reliably present for me for reasons that were about her and not about me, and the not about me-ness of her reasons was important to hold because it was true. I had held it. I had arrived at a version of the relationship in my early 30s that was workable. I had low expectations of her presence, and I had genuine warmth for her when she was present, and the combination had been stable. The stability had been built on the low expectations. She had disrupted the stability by showing up. The showing up was producing a question I had not expected to have. What do you do when the person you have organized yourself around not receiving becomes the person who is giving? I want to say something about who my mother is and about what had produced the 20 years of missing and about what I understand about the 14 months of showing up and what has changed in her. My mother's name is Vera. She is 61 years old. She was 23 when she had me, and 27 when she had my brother, and she has spent most of her adult life in a kind of partial availability. She has been present in general while being absent in specific. She loves me in the general sense of being glad I exist and caring about whether I am well. She has not always been available for the specific occasions and the specific moments that are the form through which love is demonstrated rather than simply held. This had been the condition of my life for 37 years, being loved in the general sense by a mother who was not reliably present in the specific sense. What had changed in her to produce the 14 months of showing up was not entirely clear to me. I knew some of it. She had been in therapy for 2 years before the April reading, which was a thing she had not done before, and the therapy had been addressing apparently some of the specific ways she had been relating to the people she loved. She had told me about the therapy in a September conversation in the first year of the showing up. She had not given me details. She had said, I have been learning some things about the ways I have been absent from the people I love. She had said, I am trying to do something different. I had said, I can see that you are. She had said, is it helping? I had said, it is confusing. She had said, yes. That is a fair answer. I am a novelist. I have been writing fiction seriously since I was 23 years old, which was the year I had finished college and had moved to Raleigh and had started the specific practice of writing every day that I have maintained since. I have published 2 novels, the first 7 years ago, the second last fall, and I am currently working on the third, which is about, and this is not a coincidence, a woman who discovers in her 40s that the story she has been telling herself about her mother is incomplete. I started the third novel before my mother started showing up. The third novel has been changing as my mother shows up, which is the specific way that life interferes with fiction when fiction is drawing on life. The material you thought you understood is being revised in real time by the actual situation, and the fiction has to follow the revision. Writing fiction is the work of observing human behavior and the human interior with a specific precision and then giving that observation the form that allows a reader to experience it. I had been observing my mother's absence for 20 years. I had not written her directly, but she had been in everything I had written, in the shape that absences take in fiction, the negative space, the thing defined by what is not there. She was now present. The novel was about a woman who discovers her story about her mother is incomplete. I was discovering my story was incomplete. The fiction and the life were in conversation in a way I had not planned and was finding useful. I want to say something about the occasions she had shown up for in the 14 months and about what the showing up had looked like for each of them, because the specificity of the showing up had been part of what had been confusing and part of what had eventually been clarifying. After the April reading, she had attended a dinner I had organized in June to celebrate the paperback edition of the second novel, 12 people at a restaurant, the people who had been most present for the 2 years of the novel's life, and she had been among them, had come on time, had stayed for the full dinner, had talked to my friends with the genuine interest that she had when she was actually present. She had attended my 37th birthday, which I had organized as a small thing, 5 people, my apartment, dinner I had cooked, and she had come early and had helped me finish the cooking. She had come early to help with the cooking. This had been surprising enough that I had mentioned it to my friend Tobias, who had said, she came early to help with the cooking. I had said yes. He had said, that's not nothing. I had said, I know. She had come to the September launch event for a project I had been part of, a literary journal that some colleagues and I had started, which had had a small public event for its first issue. She had come and had stayed for the full event and had talked to people I worked with and had said at the end, I want to subscribe to the journal. She had subscribed to the journal. She had subscribed to the journal. She had attended the November reading at a different bookstore, which had been the last reading of the second novel tour, and she had been in the second row and had asked a question during the Q&A, a real question about the relationship between the narrator's understanding of her own story and the reader's understanding of the narrator. The question had been a good question. It had revealed that she had read the book. I had stood at the podium and processed the fact that she had read the book and had asked a good question at my reading. Both things were true. I had not known how to integrate them. Before I go on, if something in this story is landing close to something real in your life, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely feel it. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one. My name is Maren. I am 37 years old. I am a novelist in Raleigh, North Carolina. And this is the story of the 14 months and what happened in me and what I did with it and what I understand now about what it means to receive something you organize yourself not to need. I want to say something about my friend Tobias and about the specific role he had played in my processing of the 14 months, because he had known me for 15 years and had known the full history of my mother's absence and had been the most useful person for this particular territory. Tobias is a therapist who practices in Raleigh. He had been my friend first, and a therapist second in the sense that our friendship predated his training, and that we had the specific kind of friendship that is not constrained by his professional framework. He had known my mother from a distance, from the stories, from the occasional event where she had been present, from the full history of absences. When I had told him about the April reading, he had listened and had said, "What did you feel when she left?" I had said, "Confused." He had said, "What kind of confused?" I had said, "The kind where the expected thing did not happen and the unexpected thing did, and you have not yet reorganized around the unexpected thing." He had said, "Yes." He has said you have an expectation that she will be absent. She was present. Your model for the relationship includes the absence as a feature. The presence disrupts the model. I had said, "Yes." He had said the question is whether you want to revise the model or whether you want to resist revising the model. I had said, "What would resisting look like?" He had said, "Treating the presence as an anomaly rather than as a data point, explaining it away. Remaining organized around the absence while she is being present." I had said, "I think I have been doing that." He had said, "I think you have too." He had said, "It is understandable." He had said, "It is also not the only available option." I had said, "What is the other option?" He had said, "Revise the model." I had said, "That requires trusting that the presence will continue." He had said, "Yes." I had said, "And if it doesn't?" He had said, "Then you revise the model again." I had talked to my brother about the 14 months. My brother's name is Finn. He is 33 years old and lives in Durham, which is 20 minutes from me and 40 minutes from our mother. His experience of our mother is different from mine in a way that I had spent years trying to understand without fully understanding. He is 4 years younger than I am and has apparently a different register of expectation for her. Lower, less organized around specific occasions, more accepting of the general without specific version of her love. He had said, when I had described the April reading, "She's been coming to things for me too." I had said, "For how long?" He had said, "Since the fall before last." I had said, "You didn't tell me." He had said, "I didn't know it would be relevant to you." I had said, "Why not?" He had said, "Because your relationship with her is different from mine." He had said, "I didn't know if it was happening for you too." I had said, "It started in April." He had said, "Is it hard?" I had said, "It is confusing." He had said, "For me it has been good." He had said it simply, without qualification. I had said, "Are you suspicious?" He had said, "Not particularly." He had said, "She is different. I don't know what changed, but she is different." I had said, "You think it's real?" He had said, "I think the showing up is real." He had said, "Whether what is underneath it is durable, I don't know." He had said, "But the showing up has been real." I had said, "Yes." He had said, "Maybe let that be enough for now." I had said, "I'm working on it." I want to say something about the September conversation I had had with my mother, the one in which she had said she had been in therapy and was trying to do something different, and I had said it was confusing, and she had said that was a fair answer. That conversation had happened in my apartment on a Sunday afternoon. She had come for the first time to my apartment. She had been to my previous apartments but had not been to this one, which I had lived in for 2 years, and the coming to the apartment had been an occasion in itself. I had been here for 2 years and she had not visited in 2 years. She had come in and had looked around the apartment with the specific attention of someone who is registering the place where a person lives, and what it contains and what the containing reveals about the person. She had noted the books and the desk in the corner, and the specific arrangement of things that reveals the priorities of the person who arranged them. She had said, "It's very you." I had said, "Yes." She had said, "I don't mean that as a criticism." I had said, "I know." We had had coffee. We had talked about the novel I was working on, about the journal, about the reading tour that had ended in November. At some point in the conversation she had said, "I want to say something." I had said, "Okay." She had said, "I know that I have missed a lot." She had said, "I'm not asking you to forgive it all at once." She had said, "I am asking you to let me show up when I can now." I had said, "I am letting you." She had said, "I know you are." She had said, "I want you to know I see the letting." I had said, "The letting is not as easy as it looks." She had said, "I know." She had said, "I am sorry it is not easier." She had said, "I know that the history of it makes the letting harder than it should be." I had said, "Yes." She had said, "I am working with the history." She had said, "At whatever pace I can." I had said, "Yes." I had said, "I can see that you are." That conversation had been the closest thing to the conversation that the 14 months had been building toward. Neither of us had said everything. Both of us had said the essential thing. I want to say something about the novel I am writing, and about what the 14 months have done to it, and about what the writing had clarified that living alone could not have clarified. The protagonist of the third novel is a woman named Clara who discovers at 42 letters that her mother had written but never sent. Letters addressed to Clara across the years, letters that contain a version of her mother's interiority that Clara had not had access to while the mother had been alive. Clara reads the letters and discovers that the story she had been telling herself about her mother, the story of absence and unavailability, is incomplete, not because the absence had not happened, but because the absence had coexisted with something else that Clara had not known about. The novel is about what you do with the incomplete story when the completeness arrives. I had started this novel before my mother started showing up. The protagonist's situation had felt, when I had started it, like something I was imagining rather than something I was living. The 14 months had changed the relationship between the fiction and the life. I was no longer imagining the protagonist's situation. I was in a version of it. The letters in the novel are not the same as my mother showing up. The showing up is the available form for whatever the letters are pointing at in the novel, the completeness arriving. I have been writing the novel differently since the showing up began. The protagonist's response to the letters is more complex in the current draft than it was in the early drafts. The complexity has come from the 14 months. The 14 months have been, among other things, research. I want to say something about what the model revision Tobias had named had looked like in practice, and about what it had required me to do cognitively and emotionally to hold the new data without either dismissing it or overweighting it. Tobias had said, "Revise the model, but revise it carefully." He had said, "Do not revise it all at once." He had said, "Let the data accumulate." A single data point of presence after 20 years of absence is not sufficient evidence for a full model revision. A sustained pattern of presence over 14 months is more significant. He had said, "You do not owe the model revision. You owe it to yourself to see the data accurately." I had been doing this. I had been watching the 14 months accumulate as data. I had noted the April reading, the June dinner, the July birthday. She had come to my 37th birthday in July with a specific present that had revealed she had been paying attention. A first edition of a novel I had been looking for, by an author I had mentioned once, in passing, in a conversation she had apparently registered fully. The first edition had required looking for. It was not something you bought from a current catalog. She had looked for it. She had found it. She had brought it in July. That was data. I had been noting each piece of data without letting any single piece determine the model. Tobias had said, "Think of it as a clinical trial. Accumulate the data. Look at the pattern over time. Do not determine the outcome until you have the full data set." I had been accumulating. The data set was 14 months. The pattern had been consistent. I had not determined the outcome. I was still accumulating. I want to say something about the first edition of the novel she had given me for my birthday, and about what it had meant and about why it had been the single piece of data that had most disrupted my model and that I had spent the most time with. The novel is one I had mentioned in passing during a phone call in March, which is the call before the April reading. We had been talking about books I was reading, and I had mentioned this specific author and had said there was a first edition I had been looking for a long time. We had been on the phone for 20 minutes. The first edition had been in the category of things I mention in passing to people I trust, to remember them, and to do something with the remembering. I had mentioned it to Tobias. I had mentioned it to Finn. I had mentioned it on that March call to my mother. When she had given me the first edition in July, I had understood that she had been listening to that March call with the quality of attention that produces the finding of a first edition, the specific quality of listening that registers what matters to a person and stores it and acts on it. She had been listening to the March call the way I listen to the people who matter to me. This had been the most disorienting piece of data in 14 months, the evidence that she had been listening in the form that demonstrates genuine care. The people who listen this way, who retain the specific things you mention in passing and then act on the retention, are the people who are paying the kind of attention that love requires. She had been paying that kind of attention. I had not known she was capable of it. The first edition had told me she was. The model had required revision. I want to say something about the specific question she had asked at the November reading and about what it had revealed about the quality of her reading of the second novel and what the reading had meant in the context of the full 14 months. The question had been, how do you understand the relationship between what the narrator believes is true about herself and what the reader comes to understand is true about her? Is the gap intentional, and if so, what do you hope the reader does with it? This is a genuinely interesting question about the novel, which is a novel in which the narrator's self-understanding is incomplete and the reader is given, through the specific way the narration works, more information about the narrator than the narrator has about herself. It is the question I would ask about the novel. It is the question I had hoped readers would ask. When my mother asked it at the November reading, I had said, yes, the gap is intentional. I had said, the narrator is telling herself a story that is partly true and partly the story that allows her to be in the world in the way she needs to be. I had said, what I hope the reader does with the gap is notice it, first, and then consider what the accurate version would look like. I had said, the accurate version requires more than the narrator can currently hold. I had said this about the novel. I had also been saying it about myself. The narrator and I were not the same person, but we were in the same territory. Both of us telling a story about a mother that was partly true and partly the story we needed. The November question had been my mother asking a question about the territory I was in. She had not known she was asking about me. Or perhaps she had known. I'm still not certain. In February, my mother had called me to say she had read the first novel. The first novel is 7 years old and has been available for 7 years, and she had not read it until February of the year of the showing up. She had called on a Wednesday morning, which is when I write and which is not when I take calls, but I had seen her name and I had taken the call. She had said, I read your first book. I had said, yes. She had said, I should have read it 7 years ago. I had said, yes. She had said, I want to talk about it with you. I had said, okay. We had talked about the first novel for 30 minutes on a Wednesday morning. I had not talked about the first novel with my mother in 7 years because she had not read it and I had not pushed her to read it, and the non-conversation about the first novel had been part of the general managed absence of her from my specific professional life. She had read it in February and she had called on a Wednesday morning and we had talked about it for 30 minutes. And she had asked questions about the specific choices I had made, and had made observations about the characters that had been accurate observations, the observations of someone who had read the book with full attention. I had said at the end of the call, I'm glad you read it. She had said, I'm sorry it took me 7 years. I had said, I know. She had said, it is very good. She had said it in the tone of someone who means the assessment, rather than the reassurance. I had said, I know. I had said it in the tone of someone who has waited 7 years to hear an honest assessment and is receiving it now. I want to say something about my Aunt Delia, who had always been present in the ways my mother had not, and about what the 14 months had done to my relationship with my aunt, and about what Delia had said when I had told her what was happening. Delia is my mother's sister. She is 65 years old and has been the person in my family of origin who showed up for the specific occasions. My graduations, my weddings, the openings and the birthdays and the hard periods. She and I had a close relationship that had been built partly on the absence of her sister. When I had told her in June about the April reading and about my mother being present, she had been quiet for a long time. She had then said, I want to tell you something. She had said, your mother has been working on this for longer than the 14 months. She had said, I have been watching her work on it for 2 years. She had said, the therapy, the specific things she has been trying to understand, the way she has been rethinking the choices she made. She had said, I didn't tell you because it was not mine to tell. She had said, I am telling you now because you are seeing it, and I want you to know it has been real. She had said, The 14 months are the surface of something that has been going on longer. I had said, how much longer? She had said, 2.5 years at least. She had said, she has been trying to understand why she has been the way she has been for a long time. She had said, I think she is closer to the understanding than she has ever been. I had sat with this. 2.5 years of work that I had not known about, producing 14 months of showing up that I had not expected. She had been working toward me for 2.5 years without me knowing she was working. I had not known to wait. She had arrived anyway. I want to say something about what the third novel is doing now that it was not doing before the showing up. In the early drafts, Clara's response to the letters had been organized around grief. The grief for the relationship she could have had with her mother if the letters had arrived when they had been written rather than after the mother had died. The grief had been the emotional engine of the novel. I am now revising the grief out of the early drafts and replacing it with something more complex. Not grief exactly, and not its resolution, but the specific emotional state of someone who is receiving something they had organized themselves not to need and who is in the process of renegotiating the organization. The renegotiation is harder to write than the grief. The grief is a clear emotion with a clear direction. The renegotiation is the experience of two simultaneous and conflicting truths. The 20 years of absence are real and have produced real consequences, and the 14 months of presence are also real and are producing something that has not been produced before. The novel needs to hold both without resolving them into each other. The novel needs to hold both without arriving at the resolution that the reader wants, which is the resolution in which the presence repairs the absence. The presence does not repair the absence. It coexists with the absence. What that coexistence produces is what the novel is about. I'm still finding out what it produces. The life is still producing the material. The novel is following the life. I want to say something about the conversation I had had with my mother in March at a restaurant for lunch when she had asked me something I had not expected her to ask. We had been at the end of the meal. She had said, "Can I ask you something?" I had said, "Yes." She had said, "What is the hardest part?" I had said, "Of what?" She had said, "Of this." She had gestured slightly with her hand, indicating the space between us and the table and the lunch and the year of showing up. I had said, "The hardest part." I had thought for a moment. I had said, "The hardest part is that you showing up makes me aware of all the times you didn't." She had been very quiet. She had said, "Yes." She had said, "I know that." She had said, "I am sorry for that." She had said it without self-defense. She had said, "Is there a version of it where the showing up can be its own thing rather than only a comparison to the not showing up?" I had sat with this for a long time. I had said, "I don't know yet." She had said, "That's honest." I had said, "I think it might be possible." I had said, "I think the showing up is slowly becoming its own thing." I had said, "But slowly." She had said, "Yes." She had said, "I understand slowly." She had said, "I will take slowly." She had said, "I have been learning that slowly is what the work actually takes." I had said, "Yes, I am learning that too." She had said, "Maybe that is something we can learn at the same pace." I had said, "Maybe." I had said, "That would be new." She had said, "Yes." She had said, "I know it would be new." She had said, "I would like to try for new." I had said, "Yes, I think I would too." I want to say something about what the 14 months have given me in terms of understanding and about what I am carrying forward and about what the novel is reaching for. What the 14 months have given me is not resolution. They have given me complexity, the experience of holding a more complete version of a person I thought I understood completely. I had understood her as absent. She is also present. I had understood the absence as the whole story. The presence has revealed that the story was incomplete. This is what happens when you are a novelist and you are paying attention. You discover that the stories you are telling yourself about the people you love are always incomplete, and that the incompleteness is not a failure of observation, but the necessary condition of observing another person who is always more than you can see from your position, who is always in the process of becoming something that exceeds the story you have made of them. My mother exceeded the story I had made of her. She exceeded it by showing up for 14 months in a way I had not expected. She exceeded it by reading the first novel and calling on a Wednesday morning. She exceeded it by asking a good question at the November reading. She exceeded it by saying, "Maybe that is something we can learn at the same pace." I'm in the middle of the exceeding. The novel is in the middle of the exceeding. We are both following the material. The material is still producing. I am still watching. I want to say something about the second to last thing my mother had said during the March lunch, and about why it had been the thing I had thought about most in the weeks since. She had said, "I want to ask you something else." I had said, "Ask." She had said, "Do you think you will write about this?" She had paused. She had said, "About me, about what has been happening." I had been quiet for a moment. I had said, "I am writing about it." She had said, "Is it the novel you're working on?" I had said, "It is in the novel I'm working on, yes." I had said, "Not literally, but it is in it." She had been quiet. She had said, "Is that okay?" I had said, "For me or for you." She had said, "For both of us." I had said, "For me, yes. For you," I had said, "You should know that I am writing about it." She had said, "I assumed you were." She had said, "You are a novelist." She had said, "This is the material." I had said, "Yes." She had said, "I want to ask you something about that." I had said, "Ask." She had said, "Will the character who is me," she paused, "will she get to be more than the absence?" I had said, "Yes." She had said, "That matters to me." She had said, "I don't need to be a hero." She had said, "I just don't want to be only the absence." I had said, "She is not only the absence." She had said, "Good." She had said it with the specific quality of a person who needed to hear that and is receiving the hearing of it. I had said, "She is not only the absence. She is also the 14 months. She is also the first edition. She is also the question at the November reading." She had said, "Okay." She had said, "That is enough." I had said, "Yes, it is." She is more than the absence. She has always been more than the absence. The novel is learning that. The novelist is learning that too. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story connected with something real in your life, write it in the comments. I read every single one. And if someone who has been absent from your life is starting to show up, I want to say something before you go. You are allowed to be confused by it. You are allowed to let the confusion be the honest response rather than performing the relief or the warmth that the showing up should produce, but that might not yet be available. The showing up is data. Let it accumulate. The model revision does not have to happen all at once. The coexistence of the absence and the presence is real, and it is hard, and it does not resolve into one thing. Let it be both things for as long as it needs to be both things. Maybe slowly you will be learning at the same pace. Maybe that is what new looks like. You are allowed to try for new. I want to say something about the 20 years and about what the specific occasion she had missed had meant, and about what each missing had done, and what the accumulation of missings had produced in me by the time I was in my early 30s and had arrived at the stable, low expectation version of the relationship. The high school graduation had been the first major missing. I had been 18 years old and had understood that parents come to graduations unless something prevents them, and I had understood that nothing had prevented her except that the Thursday had not worked for her. The understanding had landed with a specific quality, not catastrophe, not collapse, but the specific quiet adjustment of a person who is learning the actual terms of a relationship rather than the imagined terms. The college graduation had been a deeper adjustment. I had been 22 and had been clearer about the pattern by then, but the pattern being clear had not made the missing less real. The restaurant opening had been the most specific loss. The 2-year project of the restaurant had been the biggest thing I had attempted up to that point in my professional life, and I had wanted her there in the way that you want a parent at the thing that matters most. Not as a witness to your success, but as the person who knows what the trying has cost and who is there because the trying costs something worth witnessing. She had not come. The birthday dinner at 32 had been the missing that had finally exhausted the expectation. I had organized it around the people I trusted to come, had included her because she was my mother, and she had not come. By 32, I had understood the terms completely. She was my mother, and she loved me in the general sense, and she was not reliably present in the specific sense. And the two things coexisted, and I had to hold both of them without one canceling the other. The holding had been the work of my early 30s. The showing up had arrived while the holding was ongoing. I want to say something about the practice of writing fiction and about what the specific practice had given me for navigating the 14 months in a way that other approaches might not have given me. Writing fiction is the practice of inhabiting interiority you have not experienced yourself, of imagining from the inside what it is like to be in a situation you are not in and to be the person who is in that situation. The practice requires the specific kind of empathy that is not the empathy of feeling someone else's feelings, but the empathy of imaginatively reconstructing what those feelings might be, and then testing the reconstruction against everything you know about how people work. I had been practicing this for 15 years. When my mother started showing up, the practice had given me a specific capacity, the capacity to imagine from the inside what the showing up might look like from her position, what it was costing, what it was requiring, what it meant that she was doing it. I did not know because she had not told me in full, but the fiction writing practice had given me the imaginative access to a partial interior of her that I had not had before. I could imagine what it might be like to be a 61-year-old woman who understood that she had missed 20 years of specific moments and who was in therapy addressing the specific ways she had been absent, and who had, over 2.5 years of that work, arrived at the April reading in the third row, on time, with the quality of attention she had brought. The imagining had not been the same as knowing. It had been better than nothing. The fiction writer in me had given the daughter in me a tool for receiving the showing up that the daughter alone might not have had. I want to say something about the reading itself and about what the specific act of reading in front of an audience does to the reader's relationship to the material, and about what had happened when I had known she was in the third row. A reading is a specific kind of exposure. You are reading from work you have made, which contains your interior in the form of the character's interior, and the people in the room are receiving your interior in the disguise of the character. The people who know you well know the disguise is a disguise. When my mother had been in the third row, I had been aware, while reading, that she was receiving my interior for the first time in a long time, and in a form I had made rather than in the direct form I had not been offering her. The passage I had read at the April reading was a passage in which the narrator describes what it is like to be the daughter of a parent who loves you in general and is not present in specific. I had read this passage with my mother in the third row. She had heard it. She had not said anything about the passage. She had said, "I'm proud of you." The not saying anything about the passage had been the thing I had thought about most. She had either not recognized it or had recognized it and had received it and had chosen not to name the recognition in the signing line. Either way, she had been in the room for the reading of the passage. The room had held both of us in the same space where the passage had been between us. That had been its own form of the thing. I want to say something about the specific way I had organized my adult life around my mother's absence, and about what the organizing had looked like, and about what the 14 months had been doing to the organization. When a person is reliably absent from your life, you build the life around the absence, not consciously, not as a deliberate act of grief, but the way all structures adapt to the conditions they are in. The rooms of my adult life had been arranged without her in them. The specific occasions I organized, the readings, the dinners, the birthday celebrations, had been organized for the people I could rely on to be present. She had not been in the group I could rely on. My closest relationships had been built with people who were reliably present in the specific sense. Tobias. My brother Finn, with his own version of equanimity about her. My Aunt Delia, the friends I had made at graduate school and at the readings and in the specific community of writers I had been part of for 15 years. These had been the people the rooms had been built for. When she had started coming to the rooms had not immediately rearranged themselves around her. Rooms do not rearrange that quickly. She had been a presence in rooms that had been arranged without her, and the presence had created a specific quality of slight wrongness. Not wrong in the way that something harmful is wrong, but wrong in the way that a piece of furniture placed in a room for which it was not designed is wrong. It fitted well enough. The proportions were slightly off. Over 14 months the proportions had been adjusting. The room had not yet been rearranged for her. The rearranging was slow and ongoing, and I was watching it happen. I want to say something about what my Aunt Delia had said when I had told her what my mother had asked about the novel, whether the character who was her would get to be more than the absence, and about what Delia's response had been and why it had been the response I had needed to hear. Delia had said, "Of course she asked that." I had said, "What do you mean?" She had said, "That is the question she has been working on for 2.5 years." She had said, "The question is not just about the novel." She had said, "The question is whether she gets to be more than the absence to you." I had been quiet. She had said, "She has been the absence in your life for 20 years. She knows this. She has been doing the work of understanding how she became that." She had said, "The question about the novel is the question about the relationship. Does she get to be more than the absence?" I had said, "Yes, she gets to be more." Delia had said, "I think you should tell her that in the relationship as well as in the novel." I had said, "I told her in the novel." She had said, "I know." She had said the novel and the relationship are not the same thing. She had said, "She needs to hear it in the relationship." I had said, "I will try to tell her." Delia had said, "You will." She had said, "You are better at the true thing than you give yourself credit for." She had said, "You are learning to say it in both directions." I had said, "Yes, I think I am." She had said, "That's new too." I had said, "Yes, it is." I want to say something about a specific afternoon in January, between the November reading and the February call about the first novel, when I had been working on the third novel and had written a scene in which Clara receives one of her mother's letters and does not know what to do with it. I had written the scene and had then stopped and had sat at my desk for a long time. The scene had been about the specific experience of receiving something you have organized yourself not to need. Clara had organized herself around the absence of the letters, had built her understanding of her mother's interior from what was visible in the relationship rather than from the full picture that the letters contained. The letters had arrived, and Clara had not known whether to trust them. Not whether they were real, but whether they were durable. Whether the interior they revealed was the whole interior, or only the part of the interior that the letters had been organized to show. Whether the receiving of the letters required her to revise what she knew of her mother, or whether the revision was premature. I had been writing Clara's uncertainty about the letters in January, and I had understood that I was writing my own uncertainty about the 14 months. The fiction had been illuminating the life in the specific way that fiction illuminates life when you are being honest in it. The material you are working with in the fiction is clarifying the material you are working with in the life. Clara's uncertainty about the letters was my uncertainty about the showing up. The question Clara was asking about the letters, is this real and is it durable, was the question I had been asking about the 14 months. I had been answering it by accumulating data. The data had been accumulating for 14 months. The accumulation had been producing something. I had not yet named what it was producing. The naming would come when it was ready. I was learning that the naming could not be forced. In March, the same month as the lunch with my mother, I had attended a panel discussion at a local bookstore about the relationship between autobiographical experience and fiction. I had been one of 3 writers on the panel. A woman in the audience had asked the question that audiences always ask at these panels: how much of your fiction is autobiographical? The standard answer is, all of it and none of it. I had given the standard answer and had then said something that had not been the standard answer. I had said, I am currently experiencing a situation that is in the novel I'm working on. Not the literal situation, but the territory of the situation. I had said, I am writing about a woman who discovers her story about her mother is incomplete, and I am currently discovering that my story about my mother is incomplete. I had said, the fiction is following the life in real time, which is unusual for me. The other writers on the panel had looked at me with the specific recognition of people who have been in that situation and know what it requires. One of them had said, how is it to be in the material? I had said, disorienting. I had said, the fiction is supposed to be the place where I understand the thing. When the thing and the fiction are happening simultaneously, I don't know which one is clarifying the other. The audience had laughed in the way audiences laugh when something is both true and funny. I had laughed too. My mother had not been at the panel. She had not known I was on it. I had not told her. The telling had not yet become automatic. I was working on the telling becoming automatic. That too was slow. That too was new. I want to say something about what I had said to my mother at the signing table after the April reading. In the moment when she had said, "I'm proud of you," and I had said, "Thank you," and she had said, "I mean it," and I had said, "I know." The exchange had been brief and had been correct, and had also not been what I had wanted to say. What I had wanted to say was something more honest about the confusion I had been feeling for the 90 minutes since Rosario had told me she was there. Something that named the complexity of her being in the third row for the first time in 20 years. Something that acknowledged the two truths simultaneously. I was glad she was there, and I was also, underneath the gladness, in the specific, confused state of a person whose model has been disrupted. I had not said any of this. I had said thank you and I know, and the exchange had been correct and brief, and she had left. Standing at the table after she had gone, I had understood that the correct and brief was a version of the managed exchange I had been having with her for 20 years, the exchange that kept the surface smooth because I had not trusted the surface with the full weight of the thing. The 14 months had been in part the process of beginning to trust the surface with more weight. The March lunch had been a heavier exchange than the signing table. The September apartment conversation had been heavier than the March lunch. The weight had been increasing incrementally as the accumulation of data had increased. The signing table had been the beginning. The beginning had been correct and brief. The correct and brief had been what was available at the beginning. I want to say something about what Finn had said in the December conversation when I had called him specifically to talk about the 14 months and about where I was with them. He had been at his apartment in Durham. I had been at mine in Raleigh. We had talked for 45 minutes, which was longer than our typical calls because the subject had required the time. He had said, "I want to tell you what the showing up has been like for me because I think it might be useful for what you're trying to understand." He had said, "For me, it has been mostly straightforward. She started coming and I let her come, and it has been good." He had said, "I know that is different from what you're describing." I had said, "Yes." He had said, "I think the difference is in what we had organized ourselves around." He had said, "I never organized myself around her absence as strongly as you did." I had said, "Why not?" He had said, "I think partly because you were 4 years older when the pattern became established and you had more of the hope before the adjustment." I had said, "Yes." He had said, "And I think partly because I saw what the adjustment did to you and I made a different adjustment." I had said, "What do you mean?" He had said, "I watched you grieve the absence." He had said, "I was younger and I was watching you and I made a different calculus about how much to expect." He had said, "It cost me something different." He had said, "It was not free." He had said, "But the adjustment produced a different kind of expectation, and now that she is showing up, the expectation is being revised less drastically for me." He had said, "I think the work you have to do is harder than the work I have to do." I had said, "Yes, I think that's right." He had said, "She is trying." I had said, "I know she is." He had said, "Let that matter." I had said, "I'm learning to let it matter." He had said, "I know." He had said, "I can see that you are." I want to say something about the novel and about the specific moment in the writing process when I had understood that the third novel was going to require me to do something I had not done in the previous two. It was going to require me to let the character who was my mother be fully interior in a way that the previous novels had not required of any character. The first two novels had contained mother figures, but the mother figures had been secondary characters whose interiority had been glimpsed rather than inhabited. The third novel required the full interior of the mother figure because Clara's discovery, the discovery of the letters, requires the reader to understand what the mother had been holding when she had written the letters and why she had not sent them and what the not sending had cost her. The full interior had required me to imagine, as specifically as I could, what it was like to be a woman who had loved her daughter in the general sense and had not been present in the specific sense for years, and who had understood this and had been writing letters she could not send, and who had eventually not sent enough letters and had died with them in a drawer. The imagining had been the work of the novel. The work had been in conversation with the actual situation in a way I had not anticipated. I had been imagining my mother's interior for the purposes of the fiction and simultaneously observing my mother's actual behavior in the 14 months. The imagined interior and the observed behavior had been in dialogue. Each one had revised the other. The novel's mother figure had become more specific as my mother's showing up had given me more to work with. My understanding of my mother's showing up had become more complex as the novel had required me to inhabit a fuller version of what the showing up might come from. The fiction and the life had been teaching each other. I had been learning from both. I want to say something about the most recent thing that had happened in the 14 months, which had been in April, exactly a year after the first reading. She had called me on the morning of the anniversary. I had not told her it was the anniversary. She had not mentioned it as an anniversary. She had called at 9 in the morning, which is when I am at my desk but not yet writing. I begin writing at 10, and she had said, "Can I tell you something?" I had said, "Yes." She had said, "I have been thinking about the reading last year." I had said, "The April reading." She had said, "Yes." She had said, "I keep thinking about the passage you read, about the daughter of the parent who loves in general and is not present in specific." I had said, "Yes." She had said, "I knew what that passage was." I had said, "I know." She had said, "I wanted to say something about it then, and I didn't know how." I had said, "What did you want to say?" She had been quiet for a moment. She had said, "I wanted to say, I recognize myself in there and I'm trying to be different." I had said, "I knew that when you came." She had said, "Yes." She had said, "But you needed to hear me say it." I had said, "Yes." She had said, "I'm saying it now." She had said, "I recognize myself in there, and I am trying to be different." I had said, "I know." I had said it in the tone of someone who has known something for a year and is now receiving it directly and is letting the direct receiving be a different thing from the knowing. She had said, "Is that enough?" I had said, "It is enough for today." She had said, "Okay." She had said, "I'll take today." I had said, "Yes. I know. We both will." I want to say something about what Tobias had said in April, a week after the anniversary call, when I had told him what my mother had said about the passage and about wanting to say I recognize myself in there but not knowing how. He had said, "She found the words in a year." I had said, "Yes." He had said, "That is the rate of the work for some people." He had said, "Some people can say the thing immediately. Some people need a year to find the form." He had said, "She found it." I had said, "Yes." He had said, "And you received it." I had said, "Yes." He had said, "What did it feel like to receive it directly rather than from the passage?" I had thought about this for a moment. I had said, like the passage and the conversation were finally in the same room. He had said, "That's a good description." He had said, "The passage was the proxy. The direct conversation was the thing itself." I had said, "Yes." He had said, "You have been learning to let the thing itself be in the room with you." I had said, slowly. He had said, "That's the right pace for this." He had said, "Slowly is the honest pace." I had said, "Yes." She is trying to be different. She found the words in a year. I'm learning to let the thing itself be in the room, slowly, at the same pace.